What is the haps, Lucky Sevens? Happy Wednesday. We're halfway through the week already. It is going so fast. Time flies when you're having fun, right? So, today we're going to look at two different things. One, we're going to examine the goals of Thomas Jefferson and his point of view as he began his term as our third president of the United States. The reading didn't really get into this a lot, and I think it's kind of important. So, especially if you're beginning to understand Jefferson, later reading in the week talks about it like midway through talking about Jefferson. Like, I feel like you kind of have to know his background if you want to know like how he made his decisions. So that's what I'm going to do today. And then we're going to start looking at the events that lead up to the U.S. making the purchase of all purchases, the Louisiana Purchase with the nation of France, which will double the size of our country, which is pretty crazy. Makes a big government action for a small government guy like Jefferson. So let's get into Jeff, TJ Moneymaker, Tommy Jeffs, whatever you want to call him. Just kind of refreshing your memory on what Jefferson was like. Jefferson was very much not your typical politician. He kind of wanted to be an ordinary every guy. He was really chill, informal, casual. He spent most of his days in the White House working in his bathrobe and slippers. He wasn't really a, quote, people person. He liked to think and study and learn and do a lot of his most passionate work with the pen. He's a passionate believer in democratic government, wanting to ensure that everyone, meaning men who are citizens, have the same rights. Once again, if you're a Native American, an African American, immigrant group, or a woman, 50% of the population, you're not exactly in that democratic equation. Jefferson is also a deep, deep believer in education and learning. Jefferson spends up to 16 hours a day studying, reading, exploring. We've detailed his many inventions, his talents from being an accomplished musician, scientist, inventor, architect, farmer, botanist. We could go on and on and on. And as president, even though he led a pretty divisive, not decisive, well, it was decisive in his favor, but divisive 2 elections, as your warm-up indicated, he tried to promote more unity as the POTUS and try to work across the aisle with other people. Some of his goals. Jefferson was a deep believer in trying to limit the government, to make the federal government smaller. He cuts the budget significantly. He reduces the amount of debt that we borrow. He generally has a laissez-faire, which is a French economic term, which means hands off. As far as it's concerned, let the government stay out of business. Let business govern itself, and let government take care of government affairs and business take care of business affairs. In particular, he was really in favor of an agrarian economy, which means he really liked agriculture. He felt that people farming bred self-sufficient, time for exploration and learning, and a strong independent people. He felt that an industrial economy would essentially make people slaves to the owners of their factory and promote greed. And he also, in order to make the government smaller, he literally makes it smaller. He gets rid of a bunch of people who work for the government, number of government departments, as well as reducing the military. Jefferson wanted our standing army, our peacetime army, to be as small as possible. Being a child of the Revolution, Jefferson feared a large army inside the country of America during a time of peace that could be used against the people as a weapon of tyranny, as the British did. And he repeals a lot of taxes. So that's kind of gives you an idea of where he's coming from as he's starting his presidency, some of the things he wants to do. So let's get back to this guy, Napoleon. Napoleon Bonaparte, as we discussed with the French Revolution, became the dictator of France and an emperor of the French Empire, which started spreading throughout Europe, with the goal of spreading a lot of the ideals of the revolution, with Napoleon as the dictator and tyrant behind it. Napoleon had a hubris or sense of pride to match his military expertise and genius, and he saw himself as leading a worldwide empire. Yikes. In particular, he saw the Americas as a means for doing that. He wanted to resituate the French military into territories lost from the French and Indian War. And by taking control of Spain and becoming the ruler of Spain, he then also had control over the western territories west of the Mississippi River. If you remember, that went to Spain after the French and Indian War. So now, essentially, the French gained control of that. And he feels that he can now use that land and that territory, plus their Caribbean possessions, to push a French empire in the Americas. But things often don't go as Napoleon envisions them. He also has a bit of a sense of his pride often blinds him to reality. And one of the things that happens is that the largest French colony in the Caribbean, Saint Dominique, which today we call Haiti, the nation of Haiti. The slaves are led by a man by Pierre de Toussaint, and he leads a slave revolt and overthrows the French forces in this Caribbean island. And this is an important event because it's the first successful slave revolt against colonial oppressors. And it definitely sends alarm bells to many areas of the world, including the U.S., which had slaves. Here, an American, an island in the Americas, breaks away from colonial rule and declares its independence. And the U.S. kind of is like, yeah, well, we're not really going to work with you because, we own slaves and you're former slaves. Racism. Anyway, so after this loss, Napoleon says, you know what, maybe it's just not worth it trying to establish the empire in the Americas, especially because I'm also at war against the British. And, man, I really need more money to fight the war with the British. And sending my military, my navy, my soldiers into the Americas to expand and control that territory right now just isn't in the cards. I got to beat the British first. Then I'll conquer the rest of the world. So he sees the Americas as a means that maybe he can get that money and not have his military overextended. So what happens next? Well, first that box got too big. There we go. Make it over there so you can read it. So, first, Jefferson was very much concerned about controlling the Mississippi River. Many of the people and farmers in the Ohio River Valley, in the new western states of Kentucky and Tennessee, were anxious about the French controlling the Mississippi River, felt that they could be blocked from it. Many people lived in the east, also depended on the Mississippi River to trade with the territories in the west. The Mississippi, as you know, is a lifeline of America. So Jefferson wants to get control of that river. And if you want to control the Mississippi River, you got to control the mouth. That allows trade to go in and out. And the mouth of the Mississippi River is New Orleans. Jefferson sends his team of Robert Livingston, who he worked with on the Declaration of Independence, and a young, passionate politician by the name of James Monroe to France to try to negotiate the purchase of Florida and New Orleans for about $10 million. When they sit down, the French surprise them. Instead, the French ministers offer them for $15 million, $5 million more than they wanted to spend, all French territory west of the Mississippi River, including New Orleans. They didn't include Florida. That's a huge chunk of land. That's enormous. If you look, this is the U.S. before the Louisiana Purchase right here. This is all the land that was added afterwards. It doubled the size of the country. That's a huge amount of turf. It includes 15 present-day states and is overall 1/3 of the continental U.S. So instead of a city and some of the territory in Florida, they're offering them the full Mississippi River, the Mississippi River Valley, some of the best farmland on the planet, and all the land from the Mississippi to the Rockies. Whoa! Just to give you a better look at what we're talking about, here's New Orleans down here, and then the purchase includes all of this land right here, doubling the size of the country. And you can see how many states, all the Great Plains, the Mississippi River Valley, the entire Mississippi River, most of the Missouri River, a number of different tributaries that feed into the Mississippi. This is a big deal. You would think, well, that's an easy thing. We definitely got to make that purchase, but there's a problem. Tommy Jeffs doesn't know if he has the constitutional authority. And if you remember, as a Democrat Republican, they're all about treating the Constitution as a strict limit on the federal government's power. So here he is saying we have to limit the government's power. If the Constitution doesn't say that you can do it, you can't do it. Sorry. And now there's nothing in the Constitution about adding more states and purchasing more land. They never thought to add that in to the Constitution. So he's in unfounded territory. You have some people that say, well, no, Mr. Jefferson is constitutional because it's a treaty. You have the power to negotiate treaties, so sure, you can do it. Other people say, no, we need an amendment to the Constitution, and that will take a while to get passed if you're going to be allowed to make this purchase. And Jefferson knows he has a short lifespan on this. Napoleon wants the money now. He's not going to be offering it up later. So, in the end, Jefferson decides this is just too good of an opportunity for the future of the country and gives the $15 million. Now, $15 million in today's money, once again, for me, that would be a lot. But with the amount of money that our government spends is nothing. However, in that time period, it was a huge portion of the overall U.S. budget. Jefferson spends a crazy amount of money. But he decides to do it anyway for the good of the country, even though it goes against a lot of his principles of having a limited government, not doing actions that are beyond the powers of the Constitution. He feels that he has to, he has to compromise his principles and to do what's best for the nation. Many people initially thought this was a bad idea. Jefferson got a lot of flack for buying all this land. Some people thought it was a wasteland. As we're going to talk about in our next unit, people didn't exactly know what was west of the Mississippi River. So he definitely took a lot of flack for it, but in the end, it worked out. So, my question for you, was it right for Jefferson to compromise his small government ideals, his principles, and make a big government deal in order to complete a Louisiana Purchase? I'd love to read your answers. Have a wonderful Wednesday. Remember to post them in the comments below. Thanks so much.